Thanks for tuning in to MassapequaNews.com. For the news week beginning August 28th, 2007, I'm Christine Sohmer, and this is Lorianne LaMarca. Welcome.
Thank you.
You are very welcome. Lorianne, you first caught the attention of MassapequaNews.com because you are married to the esteemed trial lawyer, Greg LaMarca.
Yes.
And he told a wonderful story about how the two of you met.
Correct.
He's very fortunate to have you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
As I am to have him.
Next, you caught the attention of MassapequaNews.com. We found you on MySpace.
Correct.
Because you are an advocate for animal rights.
Yes, I am.
Tell me a little bit about that.
I recently became an advocate within the last 6 months after purchasing a puppy from a pet store. He subsequently got very ill and died January 5th after a lengthy illness. So, investigating where he came from, I found out he comes from a puppy mill, which is a mass breeding facility that has no regard for breeding standards. So when I found that out, I felt I had to do something to alert the consumers and the public about what they sell in pet stores. Therefore, I had taken this very seriously, and I'm out to alert all consumers and all my fellow Massapequans and anybody who will listen.
The bill that you're trying to pass, Charlemagne's Law.
Right.
Before we even get into that, let's talk about one of the biggest misconceptions about animal shelters.
Okay. Animal shelters are filled to the hilt these days. They euthanize, probably in the United States, according to the Humane Society in DC, they probably euthanize about 7 to 8 million animals a year. A lot of the dogs and cats in animal shelters come from consumers who can no longer afford to keep them. And the reason for that is that they are very ill. They were not bred properly, and when the consumer takes their pet to the veterinarian, they find out that there are so many congenital problems that will cost a lot of money to sustain the animal, and they end up turning the dog over to the shelters because they cannot afford to pay that. So the taxpayers then are footing the burden for all these poor animals that are in shelters, and that most of them, I'd say about 60%, according to the Humane Society, most of them are euthanized. So that is something that the consumer has to know, whether being an animal lover or not. We are picking up the tab for these mass breeding facilities that are pretty much spitting out dogs that are diseased.
During the preliminary portion of the interview process, you had mentioned that as a teenager, you had encountered something that probably inspired this lifelong passion to protect the rights of animals. Talk to me about that.
Well, as a teenager, I lived very close to an older Italian gentleman who had grapes in his backyard. He would grow grapes. There was a raccoon that kept getting into the grapes. So one day he trapped the raccoon in his backyard, doused it with gasoline, and set it on fire, and the animal died. When the man was brought to court, the judge had fined him $500. I thought that was egregious. So it was that and many other things growing up, just having a lot of pets growing up. My pets being emotional support coming from an abusive household. That's how I became so involved with pets, loving them and protecting them. Pets of all kinds, not just my own.
Yes. Who do we hear in the background?
Oh, that's my dog. That's Domino. Oh, excuse me, not Domino. Domino was my Boston of 16 years. He passed away recently. This is Moose, my husband's Boston Terrier that I purchased for him on his birthday last year.
You know, it's so ironic that The airing date of this interview is August 28th.
Yes.
Which was the day Charlemagne came to Massapequa.
Actually, yes, on August 28th, 2003, my husband went to a pet store called the Fishbowl in Amityville, New York, and purchased Charlemagne. And he was very ill initially. We did not know that. And we brought him home. I bathed him. That night he coughed all night. The next day I brought him to my veterinarian, Dr. Ned Horowitz from the Massapequa Pet Vet. And Dr. Horowitz told me that Charlemagne had a corneal ulcer and may lose an eye. He had kennel cough, ear mites, parasites, and a heart murmur.
He was born with these congenital diseases, likely coming from a backyard breeder?
Well, he, the only congenital disease there would be a heart murmur, and that is from poor breeding. The other diseases could be treated with antibiotics and other medications. But I knew under New York state law, and that would be Article 35B, of the general business law, that the pet store needed to pay the veterinary bills. Mm-hmm. So when I contacted the pet store, I spoke to the owner, a Mr. Ken Polvidente. I explained to him that Charlemagne was very ill and his bill was about $500, and he was responsible under New York state law to pay that, and he refused. So then I had to commence a lawsuit in small claims court in Suffolk County. Subsequent to that, he wanted me to bring and prove that my dog was this sick to his veterinarian, which I totally refused. His veterinarian had provided me with a certificate saying that Charlemagne was healthy. Mm-hmm. My veterinarian provided me with an unfit for sale certificate, which I do have.
Right.
So I did not trust him. And when he found out he was getting sued, he hired a lawyer. And then my husband, who is a lawyer, ended up settling the case with him. Mm-hmm. He went on to recover from those illnesses, only for me to find out about 2 years later that he had high blood pressure, which was about 300, kidney disease, which would kill him, according to Dr. Horowitz, and the heart murmur had gotten worse. So he was put on many medications for 6 months. He also was into Dr. Horowitz's office at least 4 or 5 times a week for what they call subcutaneous injections, which is inserting a needle under his skin to hydrate him.
Right. Did the pet vet ever disclose where Charlemagne came from?
No, the pet vet, my Dr. Horowitz didn't know where he came from.
The Fishbowl?
The Fishbowl knew where he came from, and he came from a notorious mass breeding facility in the Midwest.
Okay.
And they're called puppy mills.
More than anything else, what is it that you want people to know about you and Charlemagne's Law?
I just want people to know that obviously it's too late for Charlemagne, but I care enough about all animals and all fellow human beings that I want them to be well informed. I don't want them to shop in pet stores. For the most part, they're all buying their inventory from puppy mills. They lie to consumers and say that, oh, these dogs have papers. Papers means nothing, okay? And you'll never be able to find out if the dog is congenitally ill until after it's too late. Mm-hmm. Again, read the New York State General Business Law, and you'll find out the recourse that you do have or won't have if you don't act quick enough.
Massapequans can find you with Congressman King right on the volunteers page.
Yes.
And also on the MassapequaNews.com Hot Topics page.
Yes.
Link to the petition where you can sign the petition for Charlemagne's Law.
Yes.
I know you'd like to see that put into effect.
Yes.
Lorianne, thank you so much for telling your story.
Oh, please, Christine, you're welcome. Thank you for showing interest. And if I could just say, I just want to thank my sisters, Susan and Debbie, for helping me with this, and also the wrestlers of the DOIWrestling.com. They help me all the time. They constantly post my articles, and they're really pulling for me and Charlemagne's Law.
Okay, Lori, good luck with Charlemagne's Law.
Thank you, Christine.
Mass people, have a great week. We'll see you here next.